I guess the biggest reason that I'm drawn to the Sefer, and let me just show you once again, this giant, big, bad Jew, and this poor little Hitler down here in the jihadi, and, I don't know who this lady's supposed to be here, this leftist, I guess she's supposed to be like a leftist. All of these top supporting genocide, that's Hitler says that. By any means necessary, from the river to the sea, that kind of stuff. Who's afraid of this big bad Jew? This is very important for us today because we're so lost. The Arabs are half brothers. The Arabs are forcing us to come together because we're scattered like unbelievable. Originally 12 tribes. Well, that fractiousness within the Jewish people, there's no question about it. Each one of us wants to approach the ultimate truth, but in our own ways, and we're looking for a leader. That leader is the King, the Mashiach. We're looking for that. We're looking for that Panemius. Now let's come over here and let's talk a little bit about history. It says Purim is the lesson that Hitler did not understand. This is a very important book because it gives you an identity and brings us to understanding how the 3,900 years of the existence of the thoughts of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have been into this world. And they have to be recollected again. God promised Jewish survival in the Torah. I will not reject them. This was in the days of the Chaldeans. Nor will I abhor them. This was in the days of the Greeks. To destroy them utterly. This was in the days of Haman. To break my covenant with them. This is in the days of the Romans. For I am the Lord their God. This will be in the future, when no nation or people of a foreign tongue will be able to subjugate them any further. This is the Talmud, this is Gemara and Masechtas Megillah, page 11a. There was one thing that Hitler struggled with. The problem was the indestructibility of the Jews. He understood who the Jews were and why they needed to be completely and totally eliminated. But they were still here. It didn't happen just at one time. As the preparations for the Holocaust were underway, the Nazis unveiled a new film, a propaganda masterpiece, Der ewige Jude, Der ewige Jude, German for the eternal Jew. Although the Nazis intended the title as a slur, it was the very eternity of the Jews that challenged Hitler's ideas about the nature of reality. Now this poster that you're looking at here, the Eternal Jew poster, this is about the movie. It's on the wall courtesy of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. Both the Jews and the Nazis clung to powerful ideas of eternity. Heaven on the one hand and the 1,000-year Reich on the other hand. The Holocaust was a clash between these two opposing concepts of eternity. Despite the overwhelming might of the Nazis and the physical helplessness of the Jews, Hitler feared the victory of the eternal Jew. The Jews had compounded their crime of spreading their ideas into the world by refusing to vanish like other peoples. I mean, imagine the Romans. The real ultimate, I think, dispersal of the Jews took together about 100 years after the Bar Kokhba revolution, which failed. This would have been about the year 1100, 1200. Would it be 1100? That's the wrong way to say it. Between 1 and 200, the common era today. The Jews were sent back as slaves into Rome. A few generations Rabbi Wein had this little joke. He says, all the shops in downtown Rome were closed on Shabbos. We somehow managed to reconstitute ourselves, raped, butchered, enslaved. We got out of it. The Jews had compounded their crime of spreading their ideas into the world by refusing to vanish like other peoples. Somehow the eternal Jew had survived and thrived for more than 3,000 years. Hitler and the Nazis could only attribute the Jews' unnatural existence and impact, and listen to this, to a vast conspiracy extending across thousands of years. When Julius Streicher, the Nazi leader whom the Nuremberg prosecution said had educated the whole of the German people in hatred, fell into American hands when the war ended, he explained to his interrogator that, quote, the German people will not be free of the danger of the Jewish plague until the Jewish question is liquidated in its entirety. Now let's see, I kind of missed that again, so let me say it again. The German people will not be free of the danger of the Jewish plague until the Jewish question is liquidated in its entirety. The danger of the plague inflicting the German people will continue to exist as long as there is seed of this pestilence anywhere in the world. As for clarification from the perplexed interrogator, Streicher answered that the Jewish question would not be solved as long as any Jew lives, because of the biblical covenant between the Lord and Abraham, and to the circumcision of the Jews is a sign of it. In December 1941, when Hitler made the catastrophic decision to declare war on the United States, he accused President Roosevelt and the Jews. He accused them of preparing a second Purim. He was referring to the Jewish holiday that commemorates the improbable victory of the Jews throughout the Persian Empire 2,500 years ago against Haman and his genocidal designs. In January 1944, as Berlin was being bombed, Hitler delivered a radio address warning that if the Nazis lost, there would be a second triumphant Purim festival. In 1946, when Julius Streicher was led out to the gallows with 9 other Nazis sentenced to death at the Nuremberg trials and came face to face with the rope that would end his life, he screamed, "Purim Fest 1946." The Nazis really studied us. The Nazis had a special obsession with the Jewish holiday of Purim. In 1941, the Polish town of, I don't know how to pronounce it, Zunchka Wola, the Nazis had decided to create their own twisted version of Purim. They demanded that the Jews choose 10 of their own by lot to be hanged to avenge the death of Haman's 10 sons, who were hanged in the wake of course, the failed attempt to exterminate the Jews. Now, isn't this amazing? You never heard this before. At their hanging on Purim morning, the assembled Jews were told that these 10 were being executed in revenge for Haman. But when the 10 condemned men learned that their deaths would save the Jewish community, they were filled with a strange joy and sang as they stepped up to the gallows. The Jews who died knew their deaths were all what we call Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of God. They found meaning in their deaths because they knew they were part of a great ongoing story of their own lives and their own people, of Jewish strength of the spirit, and the victory that would come in due time. There was no singing when 10 Nazis, including Streicher, were hanged for their crimes on October 16, 1946. Streicher and his fellow Nazis found no such comfort or meaning in their deaths. They knew that they had lost the world. They had lost the world war over humanity's core values. In the battle for the soul of humanity, the law of dominance and power that Hitler sought to restore was defeated by the Jewish ethos of human dignity that has shaped civilizations. Now, these words are really important for us so that we can understand who we are and how we got there, the greatness of a relationship to eternity. The frenzied cry of Purim Fest suggests that Streicher saw the modern recreation of the Purim story that again, in the latest attempt at genocide, the Nazi Hamans end on the gallows, just like Haman. The Nazis had worked to disprove Purim and Jewish identity, only for Streicher to realize in the closing moments of his life that he was the latest actor in this ongoing Purim story. Why were Hitler and the Nazis so obsessed with this particular Jewish holiday? Streicher testified at Nuremberg that he had studied the Torah and read the work of Jewish scholars. He was intimately familiar with the Purim story. It seems that when people like Streicher studied the Torah, they naturally gravitated toward the figure most like themselves. That's interesting. Haman seeks to exterminate the Jews. He advises the king that they are unlike any other people. They are a disruptive element, being scattered throughout the kingdom and following their own laws. All this power and wealth is worth noting. He says it's worth nothing to me as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Haman wails at a crucial moment in the book of Esther. Despite being the second most powerful man in the world's mightiest empire, he could not tolerate one Jew refusing to acknowledge that power. His power was everything. Similarly for Hitler, the military conquest of all of Europe was meaningless to him. Why? Because if one Jew remained alive, in his destruction of war against America, he says his declaration of war against America, Hitler was deploying Hamanesque rhetoric about the danger of the Jews posed to the world. Just as Haman gave up his wealth and power in a bid to exterminate the Jews, Hitler sacrificed Germany, its soldiers, and the war he had begun to his obsession with destroying the Jews. Hamas and the radical Islamists prefer killing Jews and destroying Israel over the value of protecting their own people and building a prosperous society for them. Jewish history disrupts natural law, he writes. The essence of Purim is the story of reversal. It's a holiday celebrated with costumes, masquerades, and with the tradition of drinking ad de lo yada until the drinker cannot distinguish between Haman and Mordecai. This commemorates the genocidal plot that was turned upside down, transforming Purim from a day of sorrow to rejoicing, and from mourning into a holiday. Reversal. Strength becoming weakness, and weakness turning into strength. The victim emerging triumphant, and his killer falling victim to his own plot. This is a fundamental Jewish idea. It pervades not only Purim, but the entire Jewish history. The implausible survival and civilizational influence of the Jews through thousands of years of persecution, despite an enduring hatred with no parallel, reverses the natural course of events. The Nazis believed that nothing is mightier than nature, while the Jews insisted that God is above nature and that he created us to rise above our physical, natural course of events. Hitler believed that the insolent Jewish insistence that man conquers nature was a trick, but the trick proved to be another reversal of the natural order. When God lifted Abraham above the stars in an early prophetic vision, he was showing him that his people would not be subject to the normal natural rules and patterns of history. As a 19th century philosopher known as the Malbim explains, Abraham's descendants will shine light to the world as the stars do. They will be eternal as the stars are, and yet they will be above the stars, not subjugated to the normal earthly laws of cause and effect. American founding father Alexander Hamilton observed the same phenomenon 3,800 years later. Progress of the Jews from their earliest history to the present time has been and is entirely out of the ordinary. It's out of the ordinary course of human affairs. It's not then a fair conclusion that the cause also is an extraordinary one. In other words, that it is the effect of some great providential plan. Jewish history is a series of unexpected reversals, in which the revolutionary messages and beliefs of a tiny, despised people somehow become adopted by most of the world. The Nazis began the 1940s on top of the world, but half a decade later, they had fallen as thoroughly as Haman. To his credit, Hitler did suspect that there were mysterious forces working in the Jews' favor when he declared that destiny, perhaps for reasons unknown to us, poor mortals, desired the final victory of this nation. How else to explain their outsized influence on all sectors of modern Germany? Their dramatic impact on world history, indeed their very survival. Now, Adolf Hitler was right to fear the Jews. The Jewish people are the burning bush that will not be consumed. Remember the story from the Bible. 3,300 years ago, he's going to give us a little timeline now. The superpower of the day, which was Egypt, brutally enslaved the Jewish people for over 200 years. The Jewish people emerged with the Torah to share with the world its lessons of love, freedom, and justice. 2,500 years ago, the superpower of the day, which was Persia, declared genocide. The Jewish people survived. After that, they rebuilt the Second Temple in Israel. 2,200 years ago, the power of the day, which was Greece, declared war on Torah and the Jewish nation. The ragtag Jewish militias defeated them and gained newfound independence. 2,000 years ago, the superpower of the day, the Roman Empire, crushed Jerusalem, destroyed the Second Temple, slaughtered over 1 million people, and exiled the survivors. They expected that to be the end of Jewish history, and they actually created a religion to replace Judaism. But it wasn't. For 1,300 years, the European Christian Empire relentlessly persecuted the Jews through pogroms, forced conversions, inquisitions, ghettos, he didn't mention burning yet, did he? And economic exclusions to prove that the Jews were now despised by God. Instead, Jews adapted. We survived and built study halls. We learned Torah and spiritual kingdoms in the ghettos and wastelands they were afforded. We came from the bottom. For 1,400 years, Jews under Islam were together with Christians given the status of dhimmi, legally second-class citizens. While they fared better in Islamic lands than under the Christians, Their inferior status often led to persecution. 100 years ago, the Russian communists declared Judaism obsolete and Zionism illegal. About 80 years later, 1 million Soviet Jews emerged and made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, helping it become the startup nation. About 90 years ago, let's go back. Today is the year 2025. About 90 years ago, Hitler decided humanity needed a final solution to the Jewish problem. He was going to straighten the world out. He built the superpower of the day and executed mankind's most ruthless and systematic genocide. The 1,000-year Reich crumbled, and the Jews emerged and reestablished the state of Israel. After World War II, the Arab and Islamic world, the one Nazi ally that escaped undefeated and unrepentant, carried on the battle. It did it in the shadow of Hitler. After failing to throw the Jews to the sea in the Independence War of 1948, the Arabs, Islamists from Saudi Arabia to Iran, and Palestinians, with some European help, have continued with 75 years of constant terror, wars, boycotts, and diplomatic delegitimization. The Jews prevailed and built the only democracy in the Middle East. Mark Twain said in 1899 that all things are mortal, but the Jews read it again. Mark Twain said in 1890 that all things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of this immortality? So now Rabbi Shor wants to tell us, what is the secret? So he said, we began this book with the Dalai Lama's speech for the Jewish secret to survival and success, exploring how the Jews remained a cohesive people with a common identity, values, and culture. Now we know the secret. Hitler understood the secret too. In 1945, after sharing it with the Mufti, he asked him to lock it in the uttermost depths of his heart. Hitler told the Mufti, quote, "This was a decisive struggle. Ideologically, it was a battle between National Socialism and the Jews. World War II was the last gasp, historical grab for power by an almost defeated foe. It was now or never, and Hitler knew it. In the NSDAP speech, I'm not sure what that is, in 1922, he already articulated that here too there can be no compromise. There are only two possibilities, either victory of the Aryan which incidentally the word Iran is really the origin of the word Aryan, in the victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jew. The Nazis knew it was an either-or war, and the Germans were humanity's last chance to defeat the Jewish worldview. It cost 60 million lives fighting, although many were not conscious of it, over which ideology would rule, but Hitler was rejected. The Holocaust and 100 years of Arab Islamic Jew hatred are the world's most recent negative reactions to the Jewish story. Millions of Jews have been killed for it, and millions of individual Jews opted out or were forced out along the long journey, but overall, the Jewish people have bravely held on. This is the mystery that the Dalai Lama and Mark Twain wondered about. The Jewish people are a superpower in humanity's primal spiritual world. The great Russian writer Leo Tolstoy wondered, the Jew is the emblem of eternity. He whom neither slaughter nor torture of thousands of years could destroy, he whom neither fire nor sword nor inquisition was able to wipe off the face of the earth. He was the first to produce the oracles of God. He has been for so long the guardian of prophecy and who transmitted it to the rest of the world. Such a nation cannot be destroyed. The Jew is as everlasting as its eternity itself. The Jews have endured the most severe persecutions while wielding improbable influence over the course of human events, because they are the carriers of information so potent that has drawn both vehement opposition and begrudging respect from the nations, even as the clarity of its contents is dimmed in collective memory. For most of the past 2,000 years, the Jews have fought with the only weapons available to them. What were our weapons? What the Torah calls Jewish weapons of the Spirit, which are prayer, Torah study, ethical observance, and belief in God and His plan. King David, summarized it: they call on chariots, they call on horses, but we call on the name of the Lord our God. The prophet Zechariah declared, "This is the word of God to Zerubbabel. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, said the Lord." Recently, the Jewish people, much to the chagrin of much of the world, who seem to love dead Jews more than live ones, have added a physical army to their spiritual arsenal, as they had for centuries during the First and Second Jewish Commonwealths. But Hitler also understood that Jewish power was not primarily physical. The Jewish state has never been spatially limited in itself. It was universally unlimited in respect to space, but was restricted to the collectivity of the race. I'm not sure what he meant there yet. Let's see. Let's read it again. But Hitler also understood that Jewish power was not primarily physical. The Jewish state has never been spiritually limited in itself. It was universally unlimited in respect to space, but was restricted in the collectivity of the race. Not sure what that meant. The question remains, why are the Jews indestructible? The answer, in short, is that the Jewish people are essential to fulfilling the world's purpose, God's plan. This plan requires an indestructible people. In the following chapters, we will explore the deeper aspects of Jewish identity and philosophy, uncovering the profound reasons behind the Jewish people's survival and the world's reaction to them. Now, in the next chapter, which we'll get to when I can, we have the title here, The Why and How of the Jewish People. We're arguably the oldest people on the earth, maybe 1,000 years older than the Chinese. I remember Rabbi Wein saying that there was a census taken by the Romans, and they calculated us about 10 to 13 million people. And they calculated the Chinese as 5 million. This is 2,000 years ago. So look where we're at, 10, 13 million people. Sometimes it gets a little bigger, sometimes it's less. And the Chinese? This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun, Elevator Kollel.